Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's special guest is a show business tour de force whose list of achievements is nothing short of jaw-dropping. In addition to her work as an actress in movies like Goodfellas and Raging Bull, and on TV shows like Alice and Knight Rider, and on stage in hit shows including the Threepenny Opera and the Drunkard, our guest is perhaps best known as one of the greatest Broadway and off-Broadway producers in theater history. She's co-produced over 80 Broadway shows and over 50 off-Broadway shows, and so far she's won a staggering 10 Tony Awards. She's brought us a multitude of unforgettable Broadway shows, including Death of a Salesman, Ragtime, Mr. Saturday Night, Company, Tina, the Tina Turner musical, To Kill a Mockingbird, Angels in America, Fiddler on the Roof, Ain't Too Proud, and that's just scratching the surface. She co-produced two brilliant documentary films entitled Broadway, The Golden Age, and Broadway, Beyond the Golden Age. In addition to her Tony Awards, she's won a huge number of accolades, including 10 Drama League Awards, 9 Drama Desk Awards, 9 MAC Awards, 3 GLAAD Media Awards, 2 Broadway World Audience Choice Awards, and a Lifetime Achievement Awards to fill a truck. If that weren't enough, our guest is one of the most generous and beloved philanthropists in the entertainment industry. For over 30 years, she's been entertaining New York audiences with her cabaret series and TV show entitled Jamie-deRoy-friends. Her cabaret shows benefit the Entertainment Community Fund and specifically the Jamie-deRoy-friends Cabaret Initiative, a program to assist people in the cabaret industry with medical and other needs. She's also produced 9 wonderful CDs in the Jamie-deRoy-friends series. It's my great honor to welcome the incomparable Jamie DeRoy to our show. Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, my God. I thank you for that introduction. I don't know if I can live up to it.
You already have.
Oh, thanks.
Jamie, when I was doing my research, I learned that your dad, who was in the steel business back in Pittsburgh, actually helped finance Pajama Game with $1,000 contribution. So in a way, being a producer is in your blood, right?
Well, he wasn't a producer, but he was an investor. And it's such a crazy story because he had a friend in Pittsburgh who, till a few years before Hal Prince died, I thought that he was Hal Prince's roommate in college. I finally asked Hal, and he said, no, his brother was my roommate. And I was like, wait a minute, it wasn't even a direct relationship. It was crazy because he raised money in Pittsburgh. Nobody heard the music. Nobody saw anything. I mean, he just said, hey, my friend is doing this new musical, The Pajama Game. Let's all put $1,000 in. And all these friends of his did it. And I said, but Dad, you didn't hear anything or anything? He said, no, but we knew that George Abbott was the director. And to us, he was the star. And I thought that was so amazing, especially because my father wasn't in show business. He wasn't that attuned to any of that. And that he went on the basis that it was George Abbott. And the next show after that Hal Prince did was Damn Yankees. So they did it again and they had 2 major hits in a row. I mean, I should be so lucky to have that kind of success.
Well, it's in your blood, I told you. Now, if you can, take us back to the first time you saw a Broadway show, which was Pajama Game. What was it about seeing that show that made you fall in love with the theater and decide to pursue a career in show business?
Oh my God, it was so special because I didn't get to go to opening night or anything, but I was taken back a little bit later in the run. My parents took me to New York and he had arranged through Hal Prince to take me backstage. So not only do I get just blown away by this incredible musical, and everything about it was incredible. You know, the performers, the score, the dancing, the book was incredible, everything. I get to go backstage and I meet John Raitt, Janice Page, and Eddie Foy Jr. And, you know, it would have been enough probably just to be sitting in the audience, but to be in the theater backstage and to have that, I just felt, I don't know, I felt like I'm at home. This is where I want to be. And the same thing happened when I got to see Damn Yankees. Again, they made an arrangement for me to go backstage with my parents and meet Gwen Verdon. And I mean, she's a force of nature. And it was just very exciting. I mean, I had done teeny little things prior to that and since that, but there's nothing like Broadway. I mean, community theater is wonderful, but it doesn't hold a match to Broadway.
Now, you've worked with some amazing people over the years, Jamie. When you were in The Drunkard playing the ingenue, I think, Barry Manilow was the musical director, and he worked with you on your early nightclub act. What was it like working with him?
Oh, I loved Barry. I mean, well, first of all, he also, in addition to being musical director of the show itself, off-Broadway, and he was only really with us on the road when our musical director had a nervous breakdown and he had to replace him temporarily till he could replace himself totally. But because I was already working with him and I already knew him, I started coaching with him. And we started to sort of put an act together. I don't even know if we were thinking in those terms. We were just working on songs. And I went for an audition in ICM, in International Creative Management. And the agent auditioned me for the nightclub part of their roster. I auditioned. I was taken into this office and how many pieces do you have? How many charts? And I was like, I know what charts are. And I know I don't have them. So I said, well, how many do you need? And he said, well, we like to have 8. So we didn't have cell phones in those days. I ran to a payphone after this interview and said, Barry, I need charts. And he said, no worries, we'll get them for you. We have a lot of songs. We'll just throw them in order and throw a little, club act for you together. And that's kind of how it happened. My first really big gig in New York was the Living Room. And they had their own trio. So I didn't have to worry about who was going to play piano for me. But a little bit after that, they booked me into downstairs at the upstairs. And there I did have to bring my own pianist. Downstairs, they had cabaret acts, but we called them nightclub acts. And upstairs were reviews. So people like Linda Lavin and Joan Rivers and all these other people that did really review material were upstairs. I was downstairs. I opened for Jean Balos, who was a really funny comedian. But I wanted Barry to play the show for me. And when I called him, he had literally just done his own show there with a friend of his, Jeannie. So it was Barry and Jeannie. And he said, I'm so tired from just doing all those shows. I'm gonna get you another piano player. I'll do all the charts, but he's gonna play the show. I just don't want to do that anymore, or at least not now. So that's what I did. But he continued to do all my charts. And when we played, the Concord and stuff, I mean, he was such a great arranger. I don't know if I appreciated him as much as I should have in those days because he was like my pal. I went to a rehearsal. I guess it was when he was going to be playing for Bette Midler at Carnegie Hall. And Bette gave him 3 or 4 numbers to do in the middle of her show. Gave her a break, she could change clothes, and it highlighted him. Anyway, this one day, and I don't remember how far in advance of this concert it was, but I walked in and he was rehearsing with Adrienne Anderson. She said, do you mind starting your rehearsal a little bit late? Because we just finished a song and we've never played it for anybody. And I'd love to, to debut it in front of you. And I went, go right ahead. And it was, Could It Be Magic? And I just about, it was so magnificent. And I was just blown away by what they had played me.
Now, you mentioned Joan Rivers. You opened for Joan Rivers in New York and Los Angeles. Now, I would have thought that when you open for a comic, you are not allowed to be funny, but you're very funny. How did that go?
Well, when I first expressed interest in opening for her in LA, I was performing at the Belly Room, which was upstairs at the Comedy Store on Sunset. And the Belly Room was for female comedians. They didn't have any female comedians downstairs in the main room. There probably weren't many of them there. And I don't think Joan Rivers in those days, played the Comedy Store. Mostly she did her own show in places and would have somebody open for her, usually a singer. And I had gone to see her in New York very often at various clubs. And I thought, I want to open for her, but I don't want people talking while I'm on. And she had singers open and they all talked right through the singers. I'm just too, I don't know. I want them to listen to me. I don't want them not paying attention. I want the focus on me. So I mentioned this to the agent that was booking it. He sees my act. He says to me, you can open for her, but you can't do anything funny. And I said, I can't do anything funny. I'm not going to do it. I didn't move out to LA to not go in this direction. I left New York to get away from being the girl singer, where you weren't allowed to even make a comment to the audience without getting in trouble with the agent. You spoke to the audience, you got a laugh, you cracked a joke. I wasn't planning on doing any of those things. It just, somebody talks to me, I'm going to answer them. So anyway, I said, I'm sorry, I'm just not interested in doing it unless I can do funny songs. I'm not going to do stand-up. I'm not going to do what Joan does. So he said, let me talk to Irvin Arthur. And they came back and they said, okay, you can be funny. So first night, I have done my first show opening for her, and it was at the LA Improv. And after the show, I see Edgar walking towards me. And I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm getting fired. And I was not prepared for what he said, because he came over and he said, Joan loved it. We loved it. You can go even funnier if you want. Just go for it. Do whatever you want. She said she had such an easy time walking on that stage. And it was great for me too. So, and then when we came back to New York and she was opening at Michael's Pub, I opened for her again there.
I think that's such a huge tribute to you that she wasn't threatened. You actually warmed up the audience and made her job easier right from the beginning.
It was fun to work with her. I found her extremely generous. It was funny because at one point at the LA Improv, somebody yells out, are you her sister? And I went, shh, don't say that. She'll never work with me again. And then she heard it and she came on and said, I don't want a pretty sister. I want an ugly sister.
I would have loved to seen the two of you together. And another thing, you were one of the first female members of the Friars Club, along with Joan Rivers and Liza Minnelli. That was quite an honor, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was. I was very excited about that in those days. It was like in November of 1988. I will never forget. And I really wanted to be a friar. And then once I joined the Friars, I started wanting to be on the Friars Foundation, on that board, because they gave money to all these little theater companies around town. And I went to all those theater companies around town. And as time went on, I started donating on my own to all those companies, even before I got on the board.
Well, I love the fact that in 2019, you brought your Jamie-deRoy and Friends show to perform at the Milton Borough Room at the Friars Club. That must have been a very special evening for you.
Well, we've actually done it a lot there. And it's always been fun there. So I always, love doing that.
Now, Jamie, in 2011, you released a beautiful album entitled Wish on the Moon, which is a collection of very special songs, including In My Own Little Corner, He Was Too Good to Me, The Windmills of Your Mind, and the title track, Wish on the Moon, which you co-wrote. How did you go about selecting the songs for that album?
I just looked at so many songs, and there were things that I had always sung In My Own Little Corner. Was just a favorite of mine. When I was much younger, I was thinking of doing a children's album, and that was going to be on it. I never did the album, but I just, over the years, I just, thought of these things and did them. But I realized I sort of was missing a little something when we were putting it all together. And Wish on the Moon, I wrote with Barry Kleinbort and Shelley Markham. That got into 16 film festivals. That was animated by Candy Kugel. But then, because of that success, we did the one with Jane R. Snyder and Lanny Myers, Daddy's Girl, which I think was also on the album.
Can I tell you my all-time favorite song of yours?
Okay.
It's Jews Don't Camp.
Oh, God, thank you. Well, I wish I had written it.
I know, but it's hilarious. Where in the world did you get that song from?
I produced and had David Buskin had been a guest on my show many, many times. And then he was working with two other incredible songwriters, Rob Carlson and George Wurzbach. And they had a group called Modern Man, and they would be guests on my show, and I produced them, their whole show in a couple of places. And they used to sing Jews Don't Camp. David Buskin wrote it. So one day, David Buskin says to me, I owe you big time. What can I do for you? What can I give you? And I said, just let me do Jews Don't Camp. I didn't want money from him. I didn't want him to spend money on me, but I wanted to do that song. I loved it. And so I started doing it in my shows. And it's just one of my all-time favorites. It's really hard for me not to end a show with it anymore because people get mad if I haven't done it. So it's like one of my favorites.
Oh, it's my all-time favorite of everything you've done. But while we're talking about your albums, I have to mention my favorite Jamie-deRoy and Friends CD, which is called If I Sing, the Songwriters album, featuring songwriters performing their own material, Larry Gatlin and Julie Gold and so many others. Congratulations on producing such great music.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for songwriters. I mean, maybe it started with Barry Manilow and listening to Could It Be Magic? But I respect them so because I know how hard it is for me to write a song. I can't write a song alone. I have to collaborate with people. Not that there's anything wrong with collaborating with people. Some people do it all by themselves. Some people don't. But even collaborating is difficult to come up with a great finished product. I never did like a live show of all of them, but what I did do was over the years, I had them on tape, and the album was kind of like an offshoot of that. But I love to hear the songwriter do their own song. There's something so special about having the songwriter sing it. And some of these songwriters are incredibly good performers, and some of them maybe not so much, but to hear them do it, it's so special.
For sure it is. It really, really is. Now, as I said in my introduction, you've produced some of the greatest Broadway shows ever made. You started out as a singer and a comedian. Everyone knows that one of the most important jobs of a producer is to raise money. How did you learn how to do that?
I have no idea, because when I was called by Jeffrey Richards. And what happened was Jeffrey Richards was my neighbor. He was a press agent. One day, he invited me to see a one-night show at Alice Tully Hall entitled The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged. He had seen it in London. I knew nothing about it, nothing. He just sent me to see it. And I went, I can't remember who I took, but I went with a friend. I laughed my head off. I thought, oh my God, this is so clever. So the next day I get a call. How'd you like it? I loved it. Oh my God, it's so clever. I can't believe how they treated all of these different Shakespeare shows with such humor and cleverness. So he said to me, how would you like to produce it? And I was like, what does that entail? And he said, raising money. And I said, Jeffrey, I've never raised money. I don't even know how to go about that. And he said, well, you want to try? And I mentioned it to my then husband. And he said, well, why don't you try? And so I called Jeffrey back and I said, what do I have to do? And he told me. And I started raising money. And, you know, you start with your family and your friends. So look out if you're related to me or you're my pal. But, you know, I called one friend of mine who happened to have seen it in London and was a huge fan of it. And so he put money into it. And my parents, knowing nothing, they did it. You know, I said, I can't promise you the success of Pajama Game. But, you know, it started, it just kind of snowballed. Because, you know, it's a little, I don't know. It was the first time I was doing it. I found it a little hard, a little awkward. I mean, I did it, but I can't say it was easy.
Do you think that being a performer makes you a better producer?
Maybe a little bit, only to the degree that you probably can relate more to how you want to be treated by a producer versus somebody who's never, been on the other side.
How do you decide which shows you want to get involved with?
It's kind of like what speaks to me. I just kind of fall in love with things. Sometimes you have to commit to things before before they even go into rehearsal. Sometimes a show is in previews and they still need money and you get to go see it in previews and you see it on its feet. That happened to me with Gentleman's Guide. And when I saw it, I flipped for it. I loved it. And I knew I wanted to be part of it. And there are other things that come in with just a great reputation that you want to be on board of, like Angels in America, like Network, like The Inheritance. I mean, there's certain things you just really want to be associated with. Now, things that I was associated with that I loved and I wouldn't change a thing. Coram Boy came from the National Theater. I loved Coram Boy. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was directed so brilliantly, and I thought it was an amazing story. It did not do well on Broadway, and it lost every penny. But I still wouldn't have given it up for anything.
Well, one of your shows that I had the pleasure of seeing was Impressionism with Jeremy Irons and Joan Allen. It was just fabulous. I absolutely loved it.
Well, I loved that show too. And I thought that show suffered only because they probably should have worked out some of the kinks out of town without Jeremy Irons and Joan Allen. And then when we came to Broadway, replace them. But they went straight to Broadway, and it really started off as a one-act play because of a set thing. They put an intermission in, and then that kind of slowed up the play itself. So they took the intermission out, they moved the set over, took the intermission out, and then we had a really cohesive piece. I really loved it, but doesn't mean it's critic proof.
Well, I loved it.
or Riedel proof.
I thought it was fantastic. I also got to see The Country Girl with Morgan Freeman. That was really special, Jamie.
Well, that was Mike Nichols, and I loved, I loved being on a Mike Nichols project. I don't know if he loved that project so much, but to me it was very special, because of him and because it was such a classic piece. There, you get so excited about things before they open, and you never know what an audience is going to take to or not. So many things have great promise and maybe don't pan out so much. But there's other things that, oh my God, The Inheritance. I never got to see The Inheritance in London, but I knew I wanted to be on it. And I raised money for that. And when I saw it, it knocked me out. And when the men started walking down the aisle, and I was on a side aisle, and I couldn't see them behind me, but even before they started passing by me, I felt them in the room. And as they passed by me, I felt like every friend I ever lost to AIDS was walking by me saying, thank you for being there. Thank you. Thank you. And I started crying so badly. It was so moving. I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, I remember when I first came here, didn't have a lot of money, going to school, working and not making a ton of money. But I remember Dylan, the play Dylan, starring Alec Guinness. I went to see it once. I kept going back to second, to either to get standing room and stand in the back and watch it again, or we did what we called second acted it. I Can't Hear You When the Water Running was 4 one-act plays. My favorite play was in the second act. So after seeing the whole show, we used to sneak in at the intermission and stand in the back of the house, and you'd get to see the second act again. Or I would just go back and see, the whole play again and again. Nowadays, you cannot second act a play. They really check your ticket when you come back in. Yeah. But in the early days of being in New York, all the older actors will talk about second acting. I mean, I produced Broadway, The Golden Age, and a lot of the actors talked about second acting.
I know a few tourists like myself used to do it back in the old days too. Now I can confess. Tell me, do you have a preference as between musicals and non-musicals?
Not really. I think that musicals are easier to sell to tourists. When a tourist comes to New York, I just feel that generally they are more likely to buy a ticket to a musical than they are a play.
100%.
But I have a major thing for plays. But I did Finian's Rainbow, which I loved. And recently, Ain't Too Proud and Tina Turner, and those I felt they're commercial and that people will want to go to see them. But nobody, at the beginning, everybody told me nobody's going to go see Gentleman's Guide. It's not commercial. It's most of the Tony Awards that I won, I was told by friends, don't do it. It's never, people aren't going to see it. Oh, everyone that wanted to see Vanya and Sonia saw it already. Nobody's going to go see Gentleman's Guide. I mean, one after another. And yet I go, wait a minute. The first Tony, the Norman Conquest, oh, it's a trilogy. Nobody will go see it because it's 3 plays. It was 3 brilliant plays that fit together like a puzzle. You could see them in any order, or you didn't even have to see them all to enjoy it. I thought it was such brilliant writing. Alan Ayckbourn, genius, an absolute genius. But, I take chances. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes everybody goes, oh, Matilda's going to win the Tony, hands down, no question about it. But it didn't. And
it's such a crapshoot, really. And yet you're very intuitive. You invest in what you like, what moves you.
Right.
And so far, you're batting 1,000 pretty much. Now,
Well, I don't know if I'm batting 1,000, but I'm happy with with the results. And I'm also still happy with things and still proud of shows, musical or play, even if they lost every penny. If they were a good production, I feel good about it. I mean, there's a little bit about doing things on Broadway. Yes, of course, we all want to make money. And of course, the best thing about making money on Broadway is taking it and doing more things on Broadway, because it just as a snowball keeps you going, and you can do more and more and more things. But it doesn't make, because I lost money, I'm not going to stop, because I believe so much in the importance of theater, whether it's a musical or a play. Somebody's sitting out there in that shared experience in an audience. It does something to them. It does something to their soul and to their mind, and especially to young people. And this whole program, and we have it for young people at primary stages, where we bring school groups to the matinees and we have talkbacks to them. I'm on the board of Inside Broadway, where they teach kids about how a Broadway show is built, what goes into the making of a Broadway show. I am always into anything that brings young people into the theater. It's so rewarding. I can't even begin to tell you.
It's monumental for young people. Now, Jamie, we all know the theater community has really suffered over the past 2.5 years because of the pandemic, and the Broadway world has still not fully recovered from the economic impact of all those shutdowns. Are you optimistic that the theater world can come back to the way it was before the pandemic?
I am optimistic. I think it's on a slow rise. What's interesting is, some of the shows, the really big ones like Hamilton and Music Man, are doing phenomenally well. But I think that we will get back there. I have to believe that. It would break my heart to think that it's not going to come back.
Now, Jamie, I read that the idea to start the Jamie-deRoy-friends concept came from a scare you had with your thyroid. Is that right?
Well, I did have a scare. I went to a doctor about back pain, and he found a lump right here and said, "How long have you had that?" And I was like, "What's that?" And he goes, "You didn't feel this?" And we started following this thyroid lump, and I started thinking, God, what would happen if I couldn't sing anymore? Because then I was just doing my solo, Jamie-deRoy as a solo act. And so I thought, if I can't perform anymore, at least I could still share my talented friends with my friends. And it was also getting harder and harder to remember comedy material, to find comedy material. And the demand to keep changing your show constantly was like ridiculous. I mean, Joan Rivers said, I just would put in a new 1 or 2 jokes. I wove it in. I would never get up there and do a whole new act of all new jokes. You don't work like that. Not comedians, but singers do. So anyway, I just decided that I was going to start to share the stage, and that it was my joy to share the stage, because I loved watching performers and enjoying them. So I am on the stage and I am experiencing my guests just like the audience is experiencing them. I mean, the last show we did, July 11th, was for the Entertainment Community Fund, formerly known as the Actors Fund. And one of our guests was Robert Klein. And he is an old-time friend of mine, one of the first comics I ever opened for. He is as funny now as he was then, maybe even more so. But the whole show, everybody in the show, I love everybody that I put on that stage. I truly do.
Well, your show, Jamie-deRoy and Friends, is legendary in New York. You must know that. and you've raised millions of dollars to help people in the entertainment industry who are in need. Tell us about the importance that you've placed in your life, this obvious importance of giving back to the community.
Well, it comes a little bit from my parents who, they didn't have the kind of money to be huge philanthropists, but they gave to many causes. And I guess I got it from them. And my older brother and his wife have a foundation, and they have a lot more money than the rest of the family, but they're extremely charitable. And I just, I wish I had a ton of money to give away, because boy, I would produce much more. I would be on more boards. I would be giving more and more money. I mean, the older you get, and I don't have kids, you're like, does it matter how much you have when you die? The problem is we don't know when we're going to die. Too bad we don't, in a way. Maybe it isn't, but it's sort of like I want to kind of leave something behind where people can remember me in a good light. So,
well, there's no question that that's going to happen. Now, your show, Jamie-deRoy-friends, has been televised for many years in New York. I'm just wondering, did you ever want to be a regular on a long-running TV sitcom, kind of like a Rhoda character, like a sidekick?
Well, when I went to LA in 1980, that's what I had in mind.
You're a natural.
Not funny, but ironic. I left New York in like April of 1980. And I left on a Tuesday. Monday started a transit strike. And I got on a plane the next day, and I was like, ha, 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 I'm avoiding the entire transit strike. But then I got to LA, and I had the actors went on strike. So SAG was on strike, and it was very hard to get an agent then. But at the very beginning, I was sent up for something, and then I got a call back, and I said to a friend of mine who was an agent at William Morris, by the way, what shall I do? Because I have a call back for this sitcom. What happens if I get it? And he said, if you get it, we'll negotiate the contract for you. I said, oh, that's great. And what if I don't get it? Will you send me up on other things? He said, no, you should probably get a smaller agency. It was not the answer I wanted.
Well, somehow it all worked out, I'll tell you. And I know I did my research for this interview. I know you've won so many awards over the years. And when I look at all the various awards you've won, I want to mention the 3 GLAAD Media Awards you've received for outstanding representations of the LGBTQ community and the issues that affect our lives. I want to thank you, Jamie, for being such a strong ally for our community.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know exactly what year I met Clovis Ruffin, but he became one of the closest friends in my life, and sort of helped me with what to wear, and sometimes even gave me clothes or samples or whatever. It's not like he had a store or anything. And when I met him, it was not when in his major heyday of success, it was after. But we became amazingly close friends. And around 1988, and Clovis Ruffin and I were like this. And we were just beginning to see people dying of AIDS. And his partner was Angelo Dongia. And he was the first big celebrity to come out and say, I have AIDS. I didn't know Clovis then. It was before I knew him. I met him after Angelo died. I went to a benefit for the Momentum AIDS Project. The evening was produced by Peter Allen. It was an amazing show. I mean, I loved it. The next year, 1989, they came to me and said, we've spoken to Peter, and he doesn't have the time to produce the event this year. What would you think of you producing it? Well, I had never produced anything that large before. I hadn't even started Jamie-deRoy-friends yet. This was 89. And so I said, okay. Anyway, I booked the show. It was just an amazingly fabulous show. And we raised a lot of money for the Momentum AIDS Project. And I think that started me on a lot of the AIDS charities that I got involved with. And of course, the biggest of which, and I'm still involved with, and is, Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS.
Yeah, they're just
we're very blessed to have these people around us. Really blessed.
Oh, we really, really are. I want to mention to our New York viewers that the next Jamie-deRoy-friends show will be at Birdland on October the 3rd. Who's going to be appearing with you there, Jamie?
I'm so excited because I have so many of my friends, and I have been trying to get Santino Fontana on the show since I first met him in Cinderella. He's since gone on and won a Tony Award for his performance in Tootsie. He's going to be with us. Clint Holmes, who is just incredible and has won many different awards over the years. He is mostly based in Vegas, so I'm thrilled that we have him in New York now. And he has just coming up a Peter Allen show, so I'm praying he's going to do at least one Peter Allen song. But he's a great jazz performer and a wonderful singer and a wonderful writer too. He wrote his own one-man show called Comfortable Shoes. He's just brilliant. And Jason Kravitz, who he does these little musicals that are improvisational. And he was on The Practice, for those of you who watch TV. And then two of my favorite singers, Karen Mason, who has not only been on Broadway and is a favorite on Broadway, but is just an absolute favorite with a multi-cabaret award winner in the cabaret field with MAC Awards and Nightlife Awards and everything. So Karen Mason and Luba Mason, who's been in a million Broadway shows, currently off-Broadway in Los Otros. And that's by Michael John LaChiusa. But she just closed in Girl from the North Country with all the music of Bob Dylan. She was brilliant. The show was brilliant. And she's been on Broadway in Chicago and a zillion other things. Great singer, great dancer. And so we're just thrilled to have this cast. Every time I put together a show, I'm like, I'm in awe of all these people. I wish I could do what they do.
But you do perform in these shows as well.
Yeah, but I do. But to me, I'm like the glue that holds, that holds it all together. I'm not the star on the top of the Christmas tree.
You create the ambiance. You're the reason that it's happening. I go to New York fairly often, and I'm going to coordinate one of my trips around your show so I can finally see it. I've heard so much about it.
I hope you can. It's on a Monday, October 3rd, and it's just always a great time. And I think this time we're going to try to arrange that people that come to the show can come across the street and, can have pictures and, it's a bar, so one can buy a drink there, whatever. Maybe I'll get a little food set out on a table and people can just hang out a little while. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I urge everybody who's going to be in the New York area on October the 3rd, do not miss this fabulous show. And it benefits such an important cause in the cabaret and entertainment industry. Well, Jamie, it's been such a thrill to have this opportunity to chat with you about your...
I've loved every second. And let's remind people when they come to New York to go see a Broadway show or even an off-Broadway show.
Absolutely. That's the whole fun of going to New York.
I don't know. I don't understand people that come to the city and don't go to the theater.
Well, thank God most of them do. I've got to tell you, you've had an amazing career. I have a great deal of admiration and respect for you. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to appear on our show.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
Our guest has been the incomparable performer, producer, and philanthropist, Jamie-deRoy. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver, and to our team in LA and the UK. A big thank you to my friend, Judy Katz. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.